Here we understand that their systems were hacked. Everything's out there. You would think that you're the Democratic National Committee. You would think that when your emails are hacked and now it's totally opened up, you want the strength and the might of the U.S. government behind you. And you want to find out who hacked me. But that's not what they did. They didn't give the server to the FBI.
They never did.
They hired a private technology company to look at the server.
Well, it's very, very suspicious with regard to this investigation. It also says here what the heck else was on that server. How many other crimes did they commit in addition to this one? And it also, I mean, what I didn't realize until all this evidence started to come in is this is all being orchestrated by John Brennan. Now, because he's the one ultimately, when the Steele dossier is worth nothing, when none of it proves to be true, when none of it is verified, as even Comey said, none of it was verified, and they used it as the basis to get wiretaps, he peddles the report to Harry Reid. In a total setup. He goes to Reid and says, here's the report. They all go through it. If you read it, believe me, Maria, you'll immediately come to the conclusion that it's way out crazy. It's almost like it's almost written like the threat letters that you get. And he gives it to Reid, and Reid then composes a letter to Comey and tells Comey he has to investigate, but doesn't really base it on the dossier, because Comey knows the dossier is phony.
Right.
And so Comey starts the investigation, and then eventually, you know, Mueller takes over.
So what are you going to do now if John Brennan sues the president? That's what he said on Meet the Press this morning, that he's going to come up with a legal pushback for losing the security clearance, and he says he wants to make sure nobody else loses the security clearance.
Then we take his deposition right away. As the plaintiff, he'd have to go first. And I mean, I'd volunteer to do that case for the president. I'd love to have Brennan under oath for, I don't know, how many days, 2-3 days? We'll find out about Brennan, and we'll find out what a terrible job he did going back to being the head of mission when the Cobalt Towers was bombed and our Marines were killed. Or we can see what he did or said about Benghazi, how many lies he told about that. Well, I don't know if I'll go back that far to when he voted for Gus Hall. And I don't know, anybody out there ever vote for a communist?
What are you going to do, Rudy? I mean, at the end of the day,
how do you become CIA director if in the midst of the Cold War you voted for a communist? I mean, only Obama would pick you, and he had a terrible time getting through the Senate because, number one, he was in charge of a lot of waterboarding and defended it. Then he changed his mind about it. Then he was in charge of the drone strikes, where you picked out the terrorists he didn't like and you put bombs on them instead of taking them and interviewing them. Plus, he claims to be a great lover of Islam, of the Islamic religion. He says the Hajj was one of the most beautiful things he ever saw. So how does all this square up? Isn't this a guy who's an opportunist and a political hack who goes whichever way the winds are going?
How tough is this? Has this